Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at one of two Grade 2 stakes races carded at Woodbine on Saturday. Here's the field for race 11. It's the Kennedy Road, going 3/4 of a mile on the Tapeta. $175,000 is the purse. We've got the best sprinter in Canada in the field. That's the number one, Patches Oholahan. Doesn't matter whether it's turf, doesn't matter whether it's synthetic. This guy shows up just about every time.
He certainly does. 11 for 13 in his career. You go back to his last loss. It was in this race last year when Flag of Honor, a horse that he has to face again, was able to get the job done. I don't know what the standpoint is on Patches O'Houlihan. Obviously, he's very impressive, but I keep on waiting, Dan, for this day that he is going to be defeated. And so far in 2024, it hasn't happened yet. But I will say, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this weekend.
I kind of agree with you, even as we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector, and we see Patches O'Houlihan where he likes to be, controlling things up front. The three, Remuda, has some speed. Nobles, who won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint in 2023, has a little bit of speed, but if Patches breaks, he's making the top again.
I agree. Completely agree that he should be the pace setter in here. He's just much quicker. And then kind of looking at others in here, I was trying to envision a situation that someone could really pressure him, and no one was consistent enough to give me the feeling that they really could do it. I think Remuda, and who is tracked in second here, if you go back to the race two back at Colonial, suggests maybe could pressure Patches early. But I think with the inside draw, he certainly has a huge benefit over the others in here.
And he also has a big buyer edge over this field. Here into 103, 4 starts back in the Pink Lloyd, and here into triple-digit buyer speed figure winning this race. Now, he switched to turf in the Grade 2 Nearctic, and as we watch Patches O'Houlihan turn for home, he didn't seem to take the turn very well. And then he didn't seem to take the stretch very well either. I think he won this race on class alone, because this is very unlike Patches O'Houlihan, drifting all the way to the center of the course and still holding sway. Maybe he's just better on synthetic than he is on turf, but I wonder if this is the sign that he's starting to get ripe for the pickings. We see War Bomber picking up some pieces on the far outside.
You took my kind of thunder here and stole it. I think this makes you maybe wonder if you can try to beat him on the weekend. The drifting out, it was significant. And you brought up a great point. Maybe he's better on the synthetic, but also the fact that the synthetic is on the inside of the EP Taylor. He's going to get a bigger sweeping turn on the EP Taylor than the tight turn on the synthetic. And maybe that's a reason. Obviously, the figure came back huge. He ran his eyeballs out to go almost 109 and change on that turf course is grueling. But I just don't love that he was getting out so bad and he was so far wide that, as I can allude to, I'm going to try to beat him in here, I think. And I think that's the main reason. But I think kind of looking at him getting back onto the synthetic, that should help him. And 6 furlongs. I think the times I've maybe doubted him is 6.5, maybe pushing it a little too far for too long. But 6 furlongs, I mean, yes, he is the horse to beat on paper.
You mentioned that the two Flag of Honor took down Patches in this race last year, and I wonder if Flag of Honor used the Nearctic when he was beaten by Patches as merely a little bit of a prep race. I don't think he's as good on the turf as he is on the synthetic, as we saw when he won the Jacques Cartier 3 starts back with a 98 buyer speed figure. And this is Flag of Honor just going to the front in that race and toying with a Patches O'Houlihan less Jacques Cartier. I really like the way he's digging deep late.
Me too. And kind of looking at how he was set up for this race last year, he had the 1 start and then 3 weeks later wheeled back in the Kennedy Road and got a trip much different than we saw on October 29th of 2023. Now, looking at the Jacques Cartier, I think, yes, he took it in front end fashion. In here, obviously he's not going to make the lead. I don't think he will. But I think the thing that works for him and makes him sneaky is that he can sit just a couple of lengths off of it. And he's shown that he has a decent turn of foot to maybe run down horses like Patches late.
Remuda is a very honest and consistent performer and showed that he could handle the synthetic last time out in the Vigil. He tried very hard against Patches. He ran second that day. He fell a little bit further behind than usual in that race. And I think this time around, the plan is going to be to stay closer to the lead and try to at least get the jump on the true closers, horses like War Bomber.
And he's been kind of delicately handled this year, just 3 starts under his belt. Obviously, he raced at Woodbine, but that's back on September 14th. He went back to Kentucky, was working out at Turfway Park. And you brought up a great point. He wasn't slightly further back than normal last time out. He was significantly. Go to his other 10 races prior to that. I mean, there's never been a time where he's been 8 lengths off the pace early, and he still ran so well to try to catch Patches. So I think with a cleaner break and being at least closer to the action, he poses a really big threat to Patches based on that race alone.
Noble's the number 4 certainly has the class to win a race like this. He won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint in 2023, and maybe you can make excuses for his 3 somewhat disappointing efforts this year. Maybe he needed that race at Saratoga. Maybe he didn't care for the undulating turf course at Kentucky Downs 2 starts back. I wish he ran better last time at Keeneland in the Woodford, a race where he stayed close to the pace and just didn't have a lot of punch in the stretch. Maybe getting Lasix again is what could help put this horse over the top, and he'll be a price, and he's handled synth in the past.
Not sure what to do with him in here. Obviously, you mentioned he's got the back class, a very accomplished gelding, but in the turf races as of late, he hasn't been in the money. But I think the bigger thing is in terms of trip, he's been tactical just off of it. And some of those splits, especially in the Woodford, they're going very quick, sub 44. But I think he's better on the turf personally at this point in his career. At least he has been maybe the last 2 years. And I went back to the synthetic races. They're good. They're not as good though as Patches' numbers. They're comparable to others in here. And in those races, Dan, I don't know what your thoughts were, but he typically went to the front later in his career in those synthetic races. Early on, no, not his first 2 or 3 starts on the surface, but he seems like he's needed the lead on it. And when he's been great, he's been there, but he's not likely going to make the lead in here. And I just don't think he prefers the surface. I think this is more or less trying to find a spot for him to get some confidence back.
War Bomber, the number 5. I'm a glutton for punishment. I love War Bomber. He just doesn't win very often. I thought he had a big chance in the King Eddie going a 1-turn mile on turf 3 starts back. And I know Philo D'Ariana is very, very good, but War Bomber might have just hung on the wire that day. And he's come close in his last 2 against Patches. We saw him run well in the Arctic, but he's supposed to run well. The pace was fast. He had a clear run. Patches was drifting, and he couldn't get him. That being said, I think he's equally as good on synth as he is on turf. And if this pace does heat up, if we see a situation where the 2 decides to go with Patches early, maybe War Bomber, who has the fastest time form US late pace rating, can kick them down finally.
That's what he will need in here. I think the 6 furlong distance doesn't work out for him typically, right? I think he needs to go a little bit longer. But in the event, as you mentioned, the pace is loaded. He will be rolling late. He was 3rd in that same race in the Vigil back on the 14th that we talked about with Remuda and Patches. If they go any quicker than that, he's got a good chance. I wish this was, though, 6.5 or 7/8, even with a hot pace. I think that'd make a difference maker. Obviously, if it was 7/8, I don't think we'd see Patches, but even at 6.5, he'd be in a little bit better of a spot. But with that said, with that thought process, Dan, you're going to get a good price on a horse like War Bomber if you like him.
Armstrong, the number 6, was a stakes winner over course and distance as a 2-year-old, and maybe he's getting himself back into shape. Let's watch Armstrong's most recent race. It's a $50,000 optional claiming event, and he's beaten by a super sharp odds-on winner named Play Me a Tune. Armstrong tries very hard in this race. His first race off, a little bit of a break. He is going to have to take a step forward as he takes a step up in class, but this outside post position, coupled with his tactical speed, I think makes him somewhat of an interesting long shot contender.
And I think you get Leo Salas aboard him for the first time, who is going to ride him like any other race, a guy that's hungry and rides very well regardless of the level. And I think the other thing that you look at that most recent performance, you mentioned the winner, Play Me a Tune. I think this is a horse that as we go forward and we look forward to even next year already at Woodbine is going to be a very, very good horse for those connections, kind of looking at his approach to racing. It took him a little bit longer to get started. I've been very impressed with him. So for this one to run second, going 6.5, if you're looking for a bomb, to me, in terms of the top spot, he's a tough sell. But the exotics, he could be interesting. He's going to be close enough to it early on, and the cut back to 6 should help him.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Kennedy Road at Woodbine on Saturday. No major disrespect to Patches. He's way the horse to beat, and we love him. He's a very popular horse, but he's just going to be too short a price based on what we saw last time with the weaving and the wobbling and the bobbling. We'll go for a better price. You're going with Remuda.
I have to go against Patches based on 2 things. It's going to be a very short price here, but I didn't like the way that he raced last time out. I hated getting out in the stretch, as you mentioned. That to me is just a turn off, something that I don't want to bet next time out. So I have to go against him here. And I think when I looked at the others, Remuda was the most intriguing, sort of based on the fact that I think he's going to be closer to it. And if that's the case, I think he'll be closer to Patches and trying to pass him in those final stages. So very promising signs to see him back at Woodbine. And you mentioned you're a glutton for punishment, but War Bomber might get the pace set up in here. I mean, the pace should still be hot.
He needs it because if he doesn't get it, it's likely too little, too late, as usual for War Bomber. But I do think the price will be there for a horse that's always had some quality, and will always give an honest kick in the stretch. 3142 for Ashley, 5143 for me. We'll see if Patches Oholahan can do it again, this time in the Grade 2 Kennedy Road at Woodbine on Saturday. Best of luck.
Hey, buddy. Let me tell you something. If you really enjoyed this great content, just click the like and subscribe button right here. And if you enjoy the race of the day, stakes, previews, and lots more starring me, please click right here. You're not gonna regret it.